Good morning. Glad to have you here this morning. You all with us this morning. I'm Dick Kuchenrither. I'm a scholar in residence with the University of Colorado in the Civil Engineering Department. And I'll get to my background here in just a minute. But basically what I wanted to do is chat a little bit, let you know what the presentation is going to be. Basically, we're going to talk about the shift in environmental education and the whole profession in the recent years. And then talk about the content of a new graduate program here at CU. Probably going to take about 10 or 15 minutes with the presentation, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So kind of keep that in mind, if you would, please. Let's see. Basically, again, I've been a scholar in residence at CU for about 4 years. Before that, I spent about 35 years, well, actually almost nearly 40 years in the water profession. I spent about 35 years with Black & Veatch, planning, designing, and building water and wastewater facilities across the globe. And the past president of the Water Environment Federation. And before all that, when I graduated from CU, I went into the Army for 4 years as an officer in the engineering branch. I have my BS and MS here from CU, and I have my PhD in environmental health from the University of Kansas. And between each of my degrees, the important thing, there's like 6 or 8 years between each degree. It took me a little time to take care of my family and earn some money and move on. So basically what I really wanted to start off with is why the Water and Engineering Management Program, why it's here, and some of the background about it, and kind of what's happening in the water profession from my perspective. The first one is this is really, we're talking about the nexus of water and energy, completely new. We're really concerned about carbon footprints, and this is beyond just changing light bulbs in treatment plants. There's no doubt about that. So keep that in mind that now instead of wastewater treatment plants, we have resource recovery facilities, and really most of them want to be energy producers and not consumers. So that's part of the nexus that we're talking about. Retirement, some of the utilities and consulting firms around these days, probably up to 40%, 35 to 40% of the people could retire right now. So there's a huge amount of retirements coming down the road, no doubt about that. Renovation or expansion of infrastructure, population continues to grow. So there's no doubt about that. We're always going to have to build infrastructure. Now, the other infrastructure that we put in the early 1970s when the Clean Water Act passed, those are getting close to 40 or 50 years. So again, a lot of rehabilitation is going to have to take place in terms of infrastructure. Increasing regulatory impacts. EPA and other regulatory agencies, state agencies will continue to pick on point source. There's no doubt about that. So that's going to continue on with issues like that. Increasing the importance of availability of graduate education for young professionals. There's no doubt about that, and that's part of the whole program, because if we're going to we talk about the increasing importance of graduate education. Number one, more people are going to have to get their master's degree, and I'll provide a little more details with that. And that would also include professional engineering. And probably 5 years down the road, about 5 years, you're going to have to get your PE. You're going to have a master's degree. There's no doubt about that. That's the key thing. Now, let me talk about the paradigm shift in environmental education. Now, before we just talked about some of the things that are going on. Now, because of the shift, the paradigm shift in education, it was about 4 years ago at this point in time, we had a workshop here in Boulder. And we were able to invite about 5 of the top CEOs and general managers, executive directors of water and wastewater utilities around the country, spend a day here in Boulder. And the key thing was, I wanted to make sure that we were completely talking about non-academic people and basically senior professionals in the water profession. That was kind of the key thing. And really what came out of that was that one of the key things was that engineers or anybody in the water profession really need non-technical skills and tools. There's no doubt about that. And out of the workshop came up with a couple things. We'll talk about 5 of them here. Leadership and management, there's no doubt about that. what the differences in leadership and management, completely different non-technical skills that we came up with. The third item was communication. Communication internal with project teams and how you deal that way, and external communication when you're dealing with the public, so there's no doubt about that. So always keep that in mind, especially when you're dealing with the public, when you're dealing with social media. I'm too old. I don't know much about social media, so that's an issue that we need a lot more people involved in that. The fourth point was utility finance. When I was designing and constructing and planning utilities, I didn't give a darn about utility finance. I wanted to build them, put them to work, let somebody else worry about how to pay for it. Towards the end of my retirement, it kind of got like, well, probably I don't have to be doing that stuff at Black and Beach anymore. And I wish I had learned more about utility finance in terms of rates and things like that. So now utility finance is something that's very important. Governance, whether it's a public sector, publicly traded utility, or one that's public, again, those are the important differences between them, and even inside the public, or pardon me, the utility-owned utilities by cities and whatnot. There are a lot of different combinations of that. So again, just having more knowledge about governance was very important. So those are really some of the important things away from the traditional technical education that master's students get now. Now we're going to be focusing on these non-technical skills and tools. And the last thing that came out of the workshop was that you're really going to have to provide more distance education items here, because that has become so important now, especially when you want to expand the amount of graduate education. It's very important. And really, what I wanted to do now is dive in a little bit and chat a little bit about distance education advantages. And that's a very interesting thing that we have to deal with here, because a master's degree or certificate, number one, increases a person's capabilities. There's no doubt about that. When you graduate, when you have an undergraduate degree, these are kind of your capabilities. You get your master's degree, it goes to here. You go on to your PhD, it's a whole completely other issues. But really what we're trying to do is really to increase the capabilities to handle all the challenges that wait ahead for young professionals. Another quick things for you: when you get a master's degree, your pay goes up. You're going to increase about 15 to 20% in the pay. It will be your salary when you end up with a master's degree. So the return, important thing, the return on an investment, if it's going to cost you, money to get your master's degree, the return on investment ROI is 3 to 5 years. So if you're interested about that, so keep that in mind. And I also talked a little bit about PE requirements are going to be more important. The other key point, really, that I want to emphasize before I move on to some of these other bullets is that for every one student that I have in class here, there are probably half a dozen to a dozen students out there that would enjoy earning their master's degree. So that's kind of the key thing from my perspective as well, because there's a lot more young professionals who want to get the master's degree, but they have no capability at this stage. The advantages, and again, if you want to get your master's degree, you can do it through distance education. You keep your job and your benefits. A lot of times, utilities, consulting firms, manufacturers will pay for your, they'll pay for your tuition. You don't have to move the boat. You can stay right where you are. You get married and have mortgages. It's over for them to move back to Boulder. So that's not, that we don't have to do that anymore. Half of my class now are from people spread across the country. The other unique thing about the distance education allows us to use senior water professionals from across the country to participate in their teachers and not here to make presentations. So kind of keep that in mind. The class participation and networking is hugely important, especially when you're talking about the senior water professionals that are here teaching the classes. Very important. All the classes are recorded. So again, if you're doing distance learning education and you have to be a meeting with the client, or you have to get down and meet with the regulatory people, that's the time. Everything's recorded. So if you can't make it to class to watch it live, you can always come back and watch the recorded class. So that's a huge important of that. So kind of keep unique of that. And I guess the other thing with the senior water professionals, this really is going to we're going to produce a much better degree as opposed to an MBA. So again, kind of keep that in mind. So basically what I wanted to talk a little bit about why we offer different distance education and kind of why that is important. In terms of distance education, you get an MS degree, a Master of Science degree with water engineering management includes non-technical skills that I just talked about a couple slides before with that. The other option, you can get a graduate certificate in water engineering management with this one. And the important thing for the certificate, you don't have to be an engineer to get a graduate certificate. It'll take about 12 hours for that, credits. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be an engineer at all. You don't have to have, just so you have a good understanding of the water profession. I've had chemical engineers, civil engineers. I had a lot of senior officers in the Army, Navy, Air Force in my classes. So again, it's availability. Distance education is available to a lot of other people. So let me talk a little bit today about how to get started. And then again, I'll leave some time for a Q&A here when we get here as well. But number one, basically to get started today, a master's degree requires 30 credit hours. Certificate requires 12 hours of that. So that's kind of the important thing. Now, most of my courses are 3 hours and they meet 1 day a week usually. It's a 3-hour class, but again, it doesn't interrupt a lot of working schedules and things like that. So we've got 3 hours there. My classes are offered, all the classes, the non-technical classes are offered in the fall and the spring and the summer. So there's no doubt about that. A couple advantages here. Obviously, you can apply till June 1st, even a little after that if you need to, but that's obviously available for you. And again, you can enroll in classes, as I said before, as a non-engineer, especially for the certificate. There's no doubt about that. Another issue for a master's degree, but we can handle some of those issues. But obviously, if you want to get a certificate, you don't have to be an engineer to do that. Again, if you decide the distance education will work for you, there's no doubt about that. Again, you can try it with enrolling and not enrolling. And so if you decide you want to enroll, you can, through distance education, it'll work for you. That's the key thing to find out. Let's see, the classes here that we're talking about really are the 9 credit hours max that you can, whatever you take in the certificate will roll over into a master's degree. So there's no doubt about that. And again, you don't have to be admitted to have those credits roll over into your and that's what I said, earn a certificate on your way to earning a master's degree. A lot of my students not quite sure if they want to go on and put in a lot to get a master's degree. At this point in time, though, a lot of them take off. They try one course and see if they like it. If they like the course, they'll sign up to enroll to get the certificate. They can do that. And then it's available, ultimately, I say up to 3 courses, and then you can roll those into your master's program. So there's no doubt about that. So with that, I really appreciate your attention. And if we have any questions, more than happy to help you with those. I think that one question who came up, talking a little bit about how do you teach management and leadership. I think that was, that's a tough question, but again, typically management and leadership are in 2 completely different courses. And what we're trying to do is explain the differences between leadership and management. Some of the things are involved are very close to each other. There's no doubt about that, but obviously they're completely different technologies or skills that you're going to need. In leadership, basically we spend a lot of time talking about some of the basic principles of leadership. Then we get into personalities, how you deal with personalities, and how you deal with team leaderships, and emotional intelligence, things like that. So that's some of the key points that we're talking about. Any other questions that we've got on that, guys? Okay, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate your time and effort. Good seeing you. And if you have any comments for us, please get in touch with us, either myself or through BBA, B Boulder Anywhere, at colorado.edu. Love to hear from you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and effort.